please subscribe and don't forget to press the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload a new video.
Okay, so the first rate is 8 points in the green for the Nifty, but that's quickly slipping. The Nifty is almost in the red now. 10,814, 10,813.
Cadila Health, that stock saw a 40% rally in the span of few months in 2017, which really bucked the trend in the pharma sector, but fizzled out since.
We are expecting the DOT to give a conditional nod for the Idea-Vodafone merger. If not today, then at least sometime this week.
News reports have suggested that ICICI Prudential CEO Sandeep Bakshi could be looked at by the board as an interim CEO to replace Chanda Kochar.
16,000 crores is the total amount, and the max buyback price that they're talking about, the buyback price that they're talking about, is around 2,100 rupees on a per share basis.
0.5% cut on the mid-cap index. The Nifty and the Sensex percentage-wise are basically flat.
You do find quite a few of the big stocks also on the losers list today. So some of the top mid-cap IT names like NIIT Tech and First Source, these companies have lost about 2.5%.
The market closes lower. We had a range-bound trading session through the course of the day. The Nifty Bank ended flat. Mid-caps underperform. We had two stocks declining for every advancing stock.
Oil retailers and airline stocks surge as crude prices fall. OPEC nations are scheduled to meet later this week. A production increase may be on the cards.
ICICI Bank's board is in a huddle to decide the fate of its managing director and CEO, Chanda Kochar. Sources say the ratification of appointment of Justice B.N. Srikrishna for a probe into the allegations against Chanda Kochar is on the agenda.
The Idea Cellular Vodafone merger moves closer to reality. Department of Telecom likely to give a conditional nod this week.
Mid-caps and small-caps end the day lower. Small-caps more than mid-caps, almost 1% in the red. We have stocks like NCC, Torrent Power, Suven losing around 5% on heavy volumes. On the other side, we have names like Indocount, Team Lease and Bata, which gained anything between 5 and 20%. Okay, those are the top 5 headlines which really defined the day's trading action. Hello and welcome to a fresh new edition of Markets Today Talk Back, the show where we tell you about all that happened in those 8 hours of trading in just 5 stories. I'm Prashant Nair. With me is my colleague Surabhi Upadhyay. Surabhi, hi.
Hi, Prashant. Well, quite an interesting session today. It was such a narrow range, right? When we just were talking 40 points, and it was just all over the place within that narrow band. So pretty inconclusive, would you say? Oh,
absolutely. Inconclusive, and don't know what to really make of it. And there was no, I mean, you know, you're starting a new week. Usually you see some enthusiasm, tongue-in-cheek, but there wasn't any. But, you know, and I think it kind of sort of, you could see that in Asia as well. So Asian markets absolutely lackluster. There were 3 markets which were shut to begin with. And of course, you've got the football World Cup. You can blame everything on the World Cup for lower volumes, lower liquidity and everything. But it was dull, basically. Equity markets, you look at Forex movements, I mean, nothing really which happened. There is one thing which has not really causing a full-blown risk-off, which is, again, this entire US-China sort of, you know, tit-for-tat kind of action. We saw action from Trump on Friday, followed by action from China over the weekend, and we continue to hear rhetoric. So, you know, there's no risk-off move, full-blown one, but let's keep a close eye on that one. Otherwise, for India, I mean, through the course of the day, and I think, you know, on Friday as well, the big story has been oil. Oil's come off quite a bit. You know, it's come off so much that we're talking about, I mean, for example, on the WTI, oil getting to the 200-day moving average, which is about $61 a barrel. As we speak, oil's seen a bit of a bounce up, but that's based on a news report which is saying that OPEC may actually increase output, but by lesser than what the street wants or expects. But I guess we'll hear lots of these news reports going into the eventual decision. But it's a highly anticipated event, the summit, which essentially starts on Friday. Oh,
absolutely. That's going to be the big headline mover. Talking about some of the individual stocks that were moving around today, let's take a look at the movers and shakers. So banks were a completely muddled lot. You had several of them, several names on the private sector side, a giant like SBI on the PSU side, largely finding you know, a lack of buyers, and that extended to the HDFC twins once again today. So this was not a support area for the market at all. HDFC Bank were down about 0.5% each. The one that was the outlier and the reason why the bank Nifty hasn't fallen too much is ICICI Bank. The stock of the day really 3.5–4% up. Lots of anticipation ahead of the next sort of series of announcements with respect to the leadership at the bank. Let's talk about the impact that the fall in oil prices had. Very clear winners were the oil marketing companies as well as airline stocks, Jet, SpiceJet, even Interglobe. All of them were up. HPCL, IOC, BPCL, even MRPL, even smaller refiners. They were all up and about today. Another very clear trend that stood out was the decline in metals. So when we're talking commodities, oil down, of course, worked well for stocks. Metals down didn't work for these couple of names. So Tata Steel, Hindalco, Vedanta, even some of the other names like Coal India, for that matter, were largely weak. On the mid-cap side, some fun and games here and there. Footwear stocks were definitely in vogue in the afternoon session. So you had a good move on Bata, 5%, Liberty, Mirza, some of the smaller names were also up and about. And last but not the least, once again, when it seems in this market you can't think of anything else and you're either going to pharma or IT or consumption. And some of the consumption names stood out once again today. So Jubilant, Dabur, these were some of the names that were in green territory today, Prashant.
Okay, I mean, let's find out, Surabhi, what our guests are making of all of this. Let's bring in our panel. We have Mitesh Thakkar on the charts and Deepen, who's joining us on fundamentals. Gentlemen, thanks very much, both of you, for being here with us. Mitesh, I mean, range day, as Surabhi said, what would you make of it? And anything you can take away for tomorrow?
No, I think not much on the index. To be very honest, you know, Prashant, I did advocate not trading the index since the morning. Very clearly, most of the indicators have turned flat. But what is important is that we are close towards, or slightly on the negative side, which is closer to the lower end of the range, around 10,775. If that breaks, then maybe with a 25-point stop loss, you might want to take a short trade for a 70-80 point kind of a decline. So it looks like a market which is contracting, which will be subdued, not move much. The volatility indicators are flattening out. So I think it will be more of a stock-specific market. Clearly, as you were also highlighting, OMCs and a couple of individual names were in focus.
Okay, well, gentlemen, then let's straight away get started. The second headline that we are tracking today, obviously, is what's happening to oil. Oil retailers, as well as refiners, retailers, as well as airline stocks were in a good mood today. And that's all thanks to the fall that we saw in oil prices overnight ahead of the OPEC meeting, which is due this week. OMCs like IOC, HPCL, BPCL were all trading with gains of about 2 to 5%. Airline stocks were up between 1 and 2% as well. In fact, we've got Manisha Gupta joining in with more details on what to expect from this all-important OPEC meeting. Manisha?
Well, it has been a very volatile day for the crude oil prices, and it's nowhere near its end because we started Asia on a very weak note and we saw some buying come back in case of Europe. On one side, you have the Vienna meeting where the OPEC and the allies will sit and discuss on the global demand, supply and prices. Also, while there are indications that you might see Saudi Arabia and Russia inclined towards increasing supply, but on the other side, Iran, Iraq, Venezuela, the other OPEC members say that they will not sign for increasing supply. So there is a discord among the OPEC members, and that's brought the prices down. On the other side, it also has been about the US-China trade war, retaliation, etc. That has been weighing onto the prices also. But then there are enough and more supply concerns, the geopolitical tensions. You also are looking at Venezuela output continue to decline. The problems in Libya is something that will continue to add premium to the prices. So going forward, when you look at the China and India demand in the Asian markets, that also is expected to be on the higher side. So it is quite a bit of a contradiction in fundamentals, which is keeping the crude oil prices on both sides. But the expectation still is that even from these levels, even from a bit of gain or rally that you might see in crude oil prices, it would see a sell on those rallies. And even from here on, it perhaps is a 3 to 5% of a downside that the crude prices might look at.
Manisha, thank you very much for that. So that's basically what's happening in oil markets. We've got a question now. So Aris Randvaha has texted us with a question on Indian Oil Corporation, IOC. He's got 260 shares of IOC. He's paid 419 rupees. I mean, that's a long way off from where the IOC price is at this point. His question is, should he buy or sell? Should he hold or sell? He's a long-term investor. Price IOC now is 175 rupees. I mean, today. His cost is 419 rupees. Mitesh, what would you tell him?
This price is before the corporate action.
Before the corporate action, yes. Because the high is 225. I mean, after the adjustment, yes.
Yeah. So I think for the timing, I think it's in hold. The stock has clearly, corrected a bit and now is showing some signs of reversal. In fact, OMCs were in focus. It needs to get past 175 and you might see the trading pop continue to about 195, 200 over levels. So maybe you can average it out more over here, keep a stop below 166 and, on the average quantity. you can sell the entire thing closer to about 200.
Okay, all right. So that's the take on IOC. Let's move on to the next query. This is a query from Palash Goklani. I think we have him on the line. He is a resident of Mumbai. Palash, hi.
I want to invest. I want to invest in SpiceJet.
Okay.
I want to buy 900 shares, around 900 shares.
Okay, so you already have a quantity in mind, and this is for an investment, you said. So let's see. Let's get a call in from Deepan on this one. Interesting story, interesting stock, Deepan. Amazing turnaround from the doldrums a couple of years ago, and the stock is off its 52-week highs, well off those levels. Would you recommend an investment in SpiceJet?
Yeah, absolutely. I think both SpiceJet and Interglobe Aviation are on our recommended list, and we and our clients are invested in them as well. And clearly, I think the passenger traffic growth is what is keeping investors interested alive in these two stocks, with passenger traffic growth in excess of 20%, and both SpiceJet and Interglobe looking at increasing their capacity means that over the next few quarters or so, should see these companies come out with decent numbers as far as top line and bottom line is concerned. And somewhat the threat of high oil prices has certainly receded, and there is also talk of trying to increase the ticket prices through fuel surcharges and other mechanism. So I think that aviation is a sector which investors certainly look at. It's a high growth, high consumption oriented sector, and valuations are still reasonable with both these companies. So would be positive on SpiceJet as well as Interglobe Aviation. Only thing is that the investor needs to be aware that typically in aviation what we've observed is that there's a high degree of volatility in earnings. So one shouldn't expect like a straight line trajectory as far as the earnings performance is concerned. But I think on a point-to-point basis, maybe on a 2-3 year basis, if one look at aviation companies, I think they would have delivered very good returns going forward.
Yeah, well, it's been a bit of an erratic journey for SpiceJet, no taking away from that. Mitesh, what do you say? I mean, there was a big scare, but look at the way the stocks recovered from the sub 100 level. What would your advice be?
It's done that very well, and also the fact that if you look at the last 8-9 months, I think it's consolidating on a broader chart basis. So it's done a range of about 150 on the upside to roughly about 100 on the downside, occasionally going just beyond the ranges for a few days. My sense is that movement might continue. So the idea should be that if it starts getting closer to the lower end, I think these are good levels to accumulate. 105, 110 is a good range to buy into. Keep a stop loss below the recent closing low, and that would be closer to about 95, and look at 145, 150 as your 6 to 8 kind of target on the upper range. Try to exit.
All right, so that is the view coming in on SpiceJet from both Deepan and Mitesh. Let's move on to the third story of the day, and this is a big one. The stock reacted quite a bit. ICICI Bank's board is in a meeting to decide the fate of its managing director and CEO Chanda Kochhar. Sources say the ratification of the appointment of Justice B.N. Srikrishna's for a probe into the allegations against Chanda Kochhar is also on the agenda. It's one of the items actually which is on the agenda. The stock was up almost 4% in trade, and that's a heavyweight. Well, Ritu is here with more details. Ritu.
Well, Prashant, that's right. The board of ICICI Bank is meeting, and key on that agenda, one is, of course, the ratification of Justice Sri Krishna to head that independent probe into the allegations made by Arvind Gupta on ICICI Bank and Chanda Kochhar's dealing with the Videocon case. But second, and more importantly, the board could consider, the treatment or the fate of its MD and CEO, Chanda Kochhar. There were news reports this morning that suggested that the chairman of the bank, that is ML Sharma, had sought the opinion of the board on whether or not to ask Mrs. Kochhar to proceed on an indefinite leave. That is something that could be taken up today, because you remember the independent probe could take 6 to 8 weeks or longer, from what we understand, and therefore if Mrs. Kochhar is asked to stay away for the period of that leave, the bank will need an interim CEO to step in. That's where reports suggest that Sandeep Bakshi, who's currently the senior most ICICI group executive at this point of time, could be asked to step in as an interim CEO. But of course, the outcome of that board meeting is keenly awaited. That meeting started earlier this afternoon, so we'll wait to hear what the bank has to say on both of these very important issues.
All right, absolutely. It's an important board meeting. Ritu, thanks for tracking that for us, and of course we'll see what the information flow is like from that. We have a query on the stock. Shrikant Rao has a question on ICICI Bank, has 50 shares, bought them at a price of 251 rupees. He has been holding the stock for the past 2 months. He wants to know if he should continue holding or whether he should book out now. Deepan, obviously very critical couple of hours coming up, but ICICI Bank, what next do you think?
See, I think even with or without the controversy surrounding its CEO, ICICI Bank's performance has been below par. They've been clearly losing market share to their peer group, the HDFC banks and IndusInd, Yes Bank, Kotak Mahindra. And the NPA-related issues still not getting resolved as far as ICICI Bank is concerned, and even overall growth rates as far as net interest income and fee-based income is concerned have been a bit disappointing. So on a fundamental basis, one doesn't really justify buying into ICICI Bank. There are other better banks, retail-focused, which investors could look at. But no doubt, I think the stock has been beaten down completely over the past few months or so, and it's in for a trading bounce, and any positive news flow on the present controversy could lead the stock price to move up, and that I think should be an opportunity for the investors to get out of ICICI Bank and go into some of the other non-controversial secular private sector banks. Could be HDFC, could be IndusInd, Yes Bank, RBL. I think there are many choices over there. So that would be my advice to the investor, not yet convinced of the underlying fundamentals and the growth momentum of ICICI Bank, and there are better banks available on a long-term investment basis which can deliver higher returns.
Okay, all right. Well, on that note, let's take a quick break. As we do that, we'll leave you with some of the thoughts we picked up from market veteran Shankar Sharma on what he thinks of the current environment and whether mid-caps, the worst of the correction is over in that part of the market.
Particularly in the small cap end of the market, if you're not prepared for a 20-30% cut like this, you have no business being there. We had a great 2017. The market was due for a correction. It was not due for a bear market. This is not a bear market. This is a good correction in an overall still what is a very strong small cap bull market. I still believe we are in an oil bull market. That continues to be a genuine risk for India. We all know it, that, and I always said India trades between two liquids. One is oil, one is water. Water being the monsoons. So our economic fortunes are on one side it's oil, the other side it's the monsoons. We'll see how the monsoons go, but oil is problematic. But therefore, I still need to have a view or find investments, and that's why the small caps offer a very good place, because they have nothing to do with oil prices or RBI's policies or even the politics of the country. But the large caps will be not bad, but don't expect blowout things from this stock market 1 year out.
Welcome back. You're watching Markets Today Talk Back. We are in conversation with Dipan Mehta, Mitesh Thakkar, breaking down today's trading action. Well, let's move to the next headline. This is the fourth one on the show. The Idea-Vodafone merger is expected to cross another hurdle this week. The Department of Telecom is likely to issue a conditional approval to the merger. Nisha has more details on this one. Nisha.
It's been 2 years since we really reported about Idea-Vodafone getting merged, and over 1 year since this particular merger got announced. So it's a very long time that this mega merger is set to take, but now the decks are almost going to be cleared, with Department of Telecommunications really set to give its final nod to this mega merger. What will be created will be the largest telecom company in the country, but it will be replete with several challenges which the telecom sector is facing currently because of the pricing pressure really kicking in. The revenues are on a decline, and this particular combined entity starts with a debt pile of over ₹1 lakh crore. Now remember that some of the synergies would kick in, and also cost savings would be there because of the two entities coming in together, so they'll be better positioned to fight the competition. And also remember that the telecom tower monetization to really get in cash into the company has already started. The deal with ATC as well as the Indus as well as Bharti Infratel merger, both have been announced. So the stage is set, but it's going to be also a cash guzzling entity. Idea has already infused 6,750 crore rupees into the company in the last few months, and is going to seek another nod for raising 15,000 crore rupees. So difficult terrain, but a large telecom company, the largest in the country, to be fought.
And of course, I mean, CNBC TV18 was the first to report on this transaction, more than a year back, actually, and Nisha reported that story. We've got a question. Ram Kuku has texted us from Chennai. He's got 10,000 shares of Idea Cellular, and he's paid 102 rupees and 30 paisa each for them. He's been holding them for the last 6 months. He wants to know whether he should hold or sell. He's a long-term investor, so he's quite a bit down. Mitesh, I mean, on the charts, is it looking like it could head back up?
I think, we had a low of around 50 a few weeks back. Seems like one temporary important bottom has been made. Now, we've already recovered around 20% from there, but I think on the upside, there's still more space to go. It might take some consolidation, but I think once the stock price starts heading towards 67, 68 and moves beyond that, then I think idea can possibly show more traction and we can look at targets close to about 83, 84. Beyond that, it's too early to make a call right now. So I think, let's wait for that kind of price levels to be hit. And once we are closer to those levels, we can take a fresh call then and there. But for the timing, it does look like that the worst is over. And after a 20% rally in the last few weeks, you might see some consolidation. But eventually, I think it looks like that the stock is bottomed out and is on its way up.
Deepan, even 6 months back, which is where Ram bought Idea, the talk was that eventually there will be 3 players left. Bharti, Jio and Idea Vodafone, and that, 3 is not a crowd. They can survive and thrive. Looking at the damage to Idea's stock price, one can't be so sure anymore. Your thoughts and what would you advise?
Oh, I think the pricing war continues in the telecom industry. And although there are 3 players, there is no pricing discipline within the 3 players, and the only way they think they can gain market share, and rightly so, is by offering cheaper and cheaper price points and cheaper packs, and that's never very good from an industry perspective. It's great for consumers, but as shareholders of all the 3 companies, I think we need to kind of rethink our strategy as far as the telecom industry is concerned. And my sense is that the investor really is stuck in the stock, and I don't see a great future for Idea over the next few years or so. And it's best advised to try and exit out of the company, use every trading bounce, spread out the purchases over the next few weeks or price points, but do exit out of Idea Cellular. I'm not that optimistic of the prospects of the telecom industry. And again, huge investment will be required for 5G as well. So it's going to be cash flow negative on that count as well. And on the whole, I think that the competitive intensity is not going to improve in the near time, and costs keep on increasing for telecom companies. So use negative on telecom and look for opportunities to exit out of Idea. There are other fantastic consumption-oriented themes which the investors can certainly chase and expect to get higher returns.
All right, gentlemen. Well, the last headline on the show today. Midcaps and small cap indices ended lower once again in today's action. Stocks like NCC, Torrent Power, Suvin, Tech Solutions, InfoEdge, HOEC, Intellect Design Arena, a lot of them were down about 5% or more on heavy volumes. On the gaining side, however, we did have names like Indocount, that was a stock that was up and about today. Teamlease gained almost 9% as well. Liberty Shoes was up 20%, as was Bata. Bata almost 5% higher. So shoe stocks had a pretty good end to this session. In fact, it's time for our last query, which is coming in from Swapnil. He has a question on Bata itself. He's looking to invest, wants an outlook for the next 1 to 2 years. So a reasonably long-term time horizon there on Bata. Deepan, I'll toss this to you.
I think positive on Bata, but just need to keep in mind that from time to time the company does come out with a disappointing set of numbers, but we need to be patient over here. Clearly, I think the strategies have changed at Bata, and they are focusing on bottom line and on growing in a profitable manner, the way they have kind of restructured their retail stores as well. So quite positive on Bata. Valuations, I think, on the higher side, but I think if you hold the shares for 2-3 years or so, to an extent that the high valuations would be justified and neutralized. And it's a nice secular growth story and good brand. And given that there's a premiumization taking place in the consumption patterns within the country, I think Bata certainly benefits from that particular trend. So positive on Bata, and could look at investing in the company with a long-term outlook.
All right, Deepan and Mitesh, thank you very much, both of you, for being with us here on the show. Surabhi, with that is a wrap.
Well, it is a wrap indeed. Prashant, thanks for being with us. We will see you with the markets again tomorrow morning.